Welcome to Android Dialogues, where we have bite-sized conversations with people in the Android community. I'm Huyen and I'm speaking with
Eugenio Marletti.
Eugenio, where are you based and how did you get started in Android?
So I am based in Berlin and I started in Italy. A friend of mine convinced me that it would be fun to try Android. I was freelancing at the time for various clients, and I had this habit of just accepting any job, even without knowing what I was doing. And I would learn while doing it, and it worked out pretty well for Android. The moment I laid my hands on it, it just felt natural. And since then, I don't know, I decided immediately that it's what I wanted to do. And so I tried to get a full-time job in it, and here I am. And
speaking of full-time jobs, where is it that you work now doing Android?
I work in Clue. I'm the lead Android developer there.
And so what is Clue?
Clue is a tracking app for female health. Unique in its kind, I would say. And
as I understand it, you do quite a bit of custom work
on
the UI.
Like 95% of it is custom, and it's heavy in the sense that, like, when we have to create a new feature, the back end of it, the logic, is almost trivial at times.
Right.
And then there is the custom UI part, which is the hard part.
Awesome. So, can we take a look at
sure.
Clue?
Of course. So, okay, so this is the app. This is the main view where you see your cycle, essentially, and you can scroll, and it tells you day by day, essentially, what's going to happen, where you are. You have this informational text here. By the way, fun fact, if you take all the informational text we have and put it all together, it's a book.
Really?
More than 100 pages, if I'm not mistaken.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's fantastic to have all that.
And then, you can essentially then enter data, and you get into this view where you have different categories that you can scroll. You can even scroll like more.
Awesome.
And then, and you can add them, and essentially, so we have a lot of them, like a lot of them. And the idea is that we analyze all this data and then try to predict what's going to happen. And then we have a lot of extra features. You can get reminders when things happen. There is a calendar view with it. We have an analysis screen.
Oh, wow.
Where you get all your cycles, and you can pick, like, I don't know, something. And then you can see whenever there are connecting symptoms.
Oh, wow,
so you can see
really
like
awesome.
How often do they happen and stuff like that. And the lines you see, like, they are thicker the more data there is in that specific day.
Right. Oh, wow, that's amazing.
And you can even, like, I don't know, align it at the end. And so, like, in this case, it would still make sense because this is fake data, so it doesn't really work. This cycle is way too big for, but whatever. Anyway, like, this is the idea essentially behind it. But but the point is, this is all custom, like, all of it.
So is this like a recycler view here, this list? Or
we use recycler views everywhere. So, like, this is a recycler view, but doing the effect where you start swiping and it fades to something else, which, by the way, is drawn on top of things, but still some things are on top over that. So it's like we have very disconnected views in the hierarchy, which have to talk to each other. It's like architecturally also a challenge. But I think, like, even like when you go to inputting data, for example, this one at the top is a recycler view with a custom layout manager, and it is custom because you can do this.
Oh, cool! Drag it. And you can
change
do like
pages and stuff.
Wow, that's amazing.
And the one at the bottom is a view pager, and we keep them in sync.
That's amazing.
And it's so easy.
I've tried looking at the kind of layout managers in the recycler view. Was that really difficult?
So it's not difficult per se. It's very low level, but that's fine. The problem is that sometimes some of the parts you get for free are very bundled, and you have to hack them to get something. Like in this example, the scrolling, for example, was a challenge because when, like, the pagination is entirely custom. And they have a drag and drop utility. It's called item something handler. I can't remember right now. But it's not meant for pagination at all. So the moment you start paginating, it will essentially try to steal your events or completely like cancel the drag and drop. So what we had to do was create a parallel scrolling system where we scroll by hand by posting to a handler and literally move the view without telling it you have scrolled at all. It's a bit of a hack, but it worked really well. And The problem is that our design is very, very specific. And sometimes even a small detail can throw you off completely to the point where it's like 90% there, but the 10% can be done. And so you still have to like rebuild it or hack it or
So what percentage of your work is, say, building like a custom component or like a custom piece of a component like a layout manager, and then like what percentage of it is like literally drawing and like using Canvas or something?
Oh, I see. There's actually not much drawing involved. Like the drawing part is easy because like drawing is easy. The problem is we have so much happening on screen that the hard part is optimizing it.
Yeah.
For example, in the calendar, now this we don't have much data. Oh yeah, we have much data here. So like this runs perfectly smooth at 60 FPS, no matter how much stuff you have on the screen. If you were to just draw it directly, and I tried at the beginning, it will lag like hell because the bottleneck is how many drawing calls you're sending every moment. And this, by the way, was done at the very beginning 2 years ago on a list view. And it's like every single row is a view and it communicates with the other rows because some elements overlap rows.
Oh, I see. There's
so
a little bit of the,
every row asks like its neighbor if it has to draw something for them, and also like the ordering of the elements makes it so hard to do. And also we have like an atlas, like we create a texture, a bitmap, where we draw all the complex elements, and then we simply draw the bitmap every time by shifting it and clipping it.
Oh wow.
It's a bit crazy, yeah.
How did you, I mean, is this all stuff that you kind of did through trial and error? Like, okay, we tried to do it in the simplest way possible, that didn't work, we're iterating on it, like, and is that how you kind of came up with these?
Yeah.
I mean, I never thought about doing it that way. That's pretty clever. I like that.
So it's generally like, okay, you start with a crazy design and you're like, oh, okay, I have to do that now. You try to break it down, try to come up with the best solution. And then you implement it the first time, generally. You try it out. If you're lucky, it just works, which is never the case. So you try to optimize, so you have to see where the bottleneck is, like why is it slow? You try to, break that down. What can I do? What can I optimize there? What can I don't know, batch? Or, sometimes you create this perfectly engineered and architecture component. It's beautiful. It's just slow because like we are on a mobile device with a JVM, which wasn't a good idea probably. And so the performance is what it is, and you have to come up with new tricks. And so it happens that sometimes like the first version of a component we write, it's beautiful. The second version is awful, is a mess of, bundled things that have to communicate in ways that should never be done.
Right.
But it is the only way to get the performance we need.
So when you say beautiful, you mean maybe architecturally, code-wise speaking, but...
Code design is beautiful.
Right.
It is the beginning, but then generally...
But the experience is less beautiful.
Exactly. And in the end, that's what matters.
So if someone is trying to do an intensely custom component like this, what do you think, in your experience with your app, what's kind of like the biggest bottlenecks or the biggest things that people should look out for? Like too many draw calls?
Yes, so that happens a lot. Like every time you have scrolling, for example, there is a new feature that I cannot show you, unfortunately, because it's not released yet. But we have a lot of horizontal scrolling, and for various reasons, we decided to manage the scrolling ourselves. All of it, including drawing the edge effects and literally scrolling. Yeah, there's a long story behind it, obviously. Yeah. But then we realized that again it was lagging because there were too many calls. Because like every time you draw and you scroll, every single frame, it has to redraw the entire thing.
Right, exactly.
So what you can do, Android Inside has something called display lists, which, by the way, I wrote an article about hacking the RenderThread. It explains... Yeah,
I read that article. It's crazy, but awesome, because we always thought we couldn't get to the RenderThread.
Yeah, don't use it in production. But
academic only.
Exactly. But the point is, it explains part of this system where the GPU can actually help you a lot because all the calls you make, they end up in a list of drawing commands that potentially can be just offset, for example. So you could say, this is what I need to draw, now just translate it.
Right.
Instead of resending everything, right? The problem is that is hidden. So we cannot technically use it directly, but there are ways to do it. For example, if you set a layer on a view, software layer, hardware layer, that does it for you behind the scenes. So for example, in this case, not directly, but like the hardware layer does it. It essentially says, okay, now take all of this and translate it around. Well, the software one creates a bitmap that gets uploaded as a texture and then, moves that around.
Now, in terms of the actual API calls that you do to your drawing or whatever, is it still the same calls that you have to make? You don't have to do anything lower level?
Well, kinda, in the sense that normally you could get away if you draw yourself with one single view that does everything. If you use layers and the layers are separate, like one part moves and one doesn't, then they have to be separate views.
Right.
And so that really sometimes, makes your code design a mess, because then you have all these different parts having to communicate, and it's a bit cumbersome, but it can be done, obviously.
It's kind of interesting how beautiful UI does not always correlate with the most pristine and perfectly architected code.
Yeah, I'm tempted to think it's like inversely proportional. The more beautiful the UI, the worse the code behind it. Probably, yeah.
So you obviously know a lot about doing some awesome custom work. What's the best way to learn about how things work? Like you were mentioning this playlist and hardware versus software layers.
So that is kind of my hobby, in the sense that sometimes I just... I don't know, I use it as a weekend project. I take an impossible design pattern and say, I'll just try to do it. And I hack and experiment until I can. And reading the source code helps a lot. Yeah. Definitely. You might be scared. We did a talk with Sebastiano about typography. And at the beginning of the talk, we give this introduction of how complex can text be, right? We compare all the different Android classes based on size. And so we show exactly that Vue is like this giant monster. It's crazy. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And thank you for, I really like Clue a lot. It's a great app. And thank you so much for sharing just a little bit of your knowledge with us. If people wanted to find you on the internet, where can they do that?
So probably Twitter is the best way,
awesome.
At Working Kills.
Thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you, everyone. And we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.